Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and y'all, from here on out, we're just blowing crap up.
Pretty much. Today we are talking about Minute 104, which begins with the blue beam and ends with Thor confronting his brother. Back on the show, we have Ewan Graf. Hello, Ewan.
Hello, very excited to talk about Blue Beam some more.
Oh, yes. So much blue beam, so many Chitauri coming in. Just so much stuff happening. We didn't even get Tony. It's just, this is really the invasion. We're going to really show New York under attack in this minute. And that's really what we get. Aside from we see shots of people down on the streets below, aside from the glass that Tony knocked, or I should say Loki, but really that fell with Tony when he fell. Now there's all these destroyed chariots, all sorts of stuff that are coming down on top of people, and everybody kind of stops, looks up, and sees what's happening. And this is kind of the start of the attack. What do you think? How does this play as far as like the way that we're watching the Chitauri take on New York City?
Poor taxi drivers. So many taxis are blown up.
So many.
Yeah.
I love the introduction to this minute because I think the architecture of this particular shot where you're looking up at the tower and the beam and debris is falling from the sky, and out of the debris come 3 Chitauri skiffs. I think that is a very cool shot. And then we reverse angle to now we're looking at them blowing up streets. You know, it suddenly feels more like a set on that particular shot to me, which is a little bit rough. Some of these shots are a little bit rough. I like how they move into handheld when they're kind of running through the street. You get a little bit more of the wartime footage. Weird cut on our waitress. We do see our waitress again, and we're handheld following her until we have a quick cut to a lockdown shot pushing up to her face, looking through the window, which is very strange to me. And then we also get the coolest shot of the minute, which is the camera locked down in one of the taxis rolling over. And I think that's cool. So overall, I give the introduction to the battle scene a thumbs up. Let's blow more stuff up.
Let's blow more stuff up. It's interesting that you call that out as a taxi that gets blown up. I actually don't think it is because we don't see any.
Yeah, we don't see a clock or any of the stuff.
Thing.
Yeah,
I think it's just a car that gets flipped. But it is. I mean, I called this out when we looked at the trailer at the end of Captain America: The First Avenger. Like, this to me is a shot that has always stood out as like, that is a well architected shot to have that rolling car, blown up, reacting to the explosion and do that full flip, all while the camera's locked down inside of it.
For sure.
Jumping back, I do want to start. This is where some of my issues with this begin, because, we've talked a number of times about moments in this film where it does feel smaller than perhaps it should as far as kind of scope and the way that it's constructed. And certainly this was something we noticed in Stuttgart, where when you cut to some of those really wide shots and you see traffic going by, it's like, why are people just driving if all of this stuff has just been happening here and these police cars are getting flipped over and stuff? It's just like there are moments that sometimes make it feel like they didn't capture the scope of all of this. And sometimes it's just the production style itself. And when we cut from, as you point out, that shot of the 3 chariots racing toward the camera and the one blasts right at us, we cut to that shot that I can't help but feel like it's artificial. Like, it just feels something about the, this is supposed to be the Park Avenue viaduct that we're on right here, but it just feels like a set. And I guess first off, like, the cut always bugs me because we're coming from looking at the top of Stark Tower, and then we cut and we're like street level suddenly. It's a weird cut on action from the Chitauri from really high to like ground level. But then just like the way that it's moving through that shot, it just all looks very artificial. Are there moments in this that feel that way for either of you, where it just kind of feels like artifice? I mean, Pete, you alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Ewan, how about you?
I'd say it will be in an upcoming minute. There's a moment with Hawkeye that really stands out to me, where like the way he shoots, it just feels like there's nothing there. He's just on a green screen. And
right.
Here it feels like that this might be not something in the background there, and you're just on a locked off set, like the way that the cars are also parked, kind of limiting off that more people come in. It feels very set-like. That is unfortunate, but I feel like it somehow also loses momentum a bit because of the perspective shifts, where like we get shooting from one to the other direction, and then we cut not to a reaction from someone, but just like from the blasts going a different way, and it just feels a bit messed and thrown together. So I like the individual destruction moments. I feel like they are great, but they're so in sequence of each other that they feel a bit repetitive and artificial, like within the narrative here.
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting? There's the shot immediately before the lockdown in-car shot that we like is actually really, really good. Like, it is a great shot of chaos and destruction and feels like I'm there. Like, it feels like I'm there.
The slow-mo one you're talking about.
Yeah, where the car's kind of up and there are people. You can see the people, like, kind of looking around and like, running from panic, doors blowing off of taxis. There's something about that shot that looks in place, unlike many other shots in this sequence. And I don't know if it's a function of just using a super long lens and getting nice and far away. The depth of field works just right for me. It feels like I'm on a street. And, you know, after the lockdown shot, when we see the people running by the camera and looking up and they're on the viaduct, it feels to me like now we're in a glorious set and there's nothing. I'm no longer in New York. It definitely just doesn't feel like New York anymore. And it's sad.
Well, maybe that's because we're not. We are in Cleveland, in fact. This was the set that they built over, they pitched this idea of filming this in Cleveland probably because it's cheaper and easier rather than New York. And they built this, this viaduct here, this whole set that they could use. But there is something about it that always just feels like a set. And it's just one of those things that, I don't know, always strikes me funny when I'm watching it because it never reads as a real location, even though it's modeled after a very real location.
What I like the most about it is like at second 14, we get that start of the flip car shot. But very much in place is an ad for Mercedes. And that car is untouched. And to me, that is just perfection. For, the MCU that likes to place Mercedes ads in there.
Or Acura, actually. It's because that's what Tony's... Yeah, it's
that's
Acura.
An Acura, yeah.
But yeah.
It's Tony's Acura.
Tony always loves those Acura.
That's so good.
It is very funny.
That's really funny. It's pristine.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, we see that bus earlier, and, I mean, it's an Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater ad, which is, certainly a New York thing, but it is interesting how they choose to kind of throw these ads in as needed to try making it as New York as possible.
Yeah. Every shot, every explosion is now sparkle mode. Do you notice that?
Yeah,
there are so many sparklers in this thing that it feels like I kind of get what they're going for, but that's another thing that I think takes me out of it. It doesn't feel like legitimate destruction.
Well, especially like the one like right at around second 2021 that's off the side of the viaduct down below, and it's almost like a firework going off.
Yes.
Like it has so many of those sparkles shooting up and out that it just feels less explosion.
It feels like I'm at an amusement park.
Yeah, it feels like we're watching a show at Disney.
There's also an explosion, and then the people all walk towards where that explosion came from. Or like, They didn't run away. They kind of go into that similar direction. So
they really do. You're right. Yeah. I've never noticed them. They're running through the tables to get to it.
Yeah, run to the explosion.
We're never going to make it. Let's end it now. Run into the fire.
That does give us, though, it's not a bad camera shot you have. And it's that shot that we were talking about, Pete, with the family that runs past on the viaduct. But we're on a fantastic jib shot where the camera actually comes off the side of the viaduct, comes down over, and I don't know if it's a jib or a wire work. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but the camera starts coming down toward the cafe. And it's kind of a nice little move that they have here before we cut.
I think there's probably a cut in between. There's the Chitauri rose pass at 25 because it's like a nice blend that almost covers the entire frame.
Yeah, we cut right to that shot where we're down on the ground with them. Yeah.
And then we cut back up, which is interesting. It's like that you can see there is a universe where the jib shot finishes and they interrupt it for some reason, but we're still moving away from the viaduct, from that road to follow and then cut down close up to them into the restaurant.
Yeah, it is odd that we have that cut down there. I wonder if it's just because the explosions are like in covering the people up. I'm not exactly sure. Or if this was really maybe a moment where they were wanting to bring us in to give us a little more connection to the people, because this is our waitress. This is Beth, the waitress, that we briefly met in a deleted scene toward the beginning of this film when she is working at the Pershing Square Cafe, which is where all of this is taking place, and serving Captain America, or Steve Rogers, and they have a brief conversation about the Stark Tower, and Stan Lee's cameo would have been there, and he tells Steve after she walks away, ask her for her number, you dummy. And so it was a cute little moment, but they largely cut all of this story with Steve and Beth out of the film. But this is really our first opportunity to really spend a little time with Beth. So I thought we would do our IMDb game with Beth the waitress. That's right. Ashley Johnson, you two. I know you don't.
Oh no!
Yeah, you
I know.
Get a
I didn't know.
shot.
I didn't know she had Beth's story.
Yeah. Right. There's much more to her than you ever would have guessed. But right around 36, you get a good shot of her looking through the window of the Pershing Square Cafe as she's watching the destruction. That is Ashley Johnson. Any sense from either of you what else Ashley Johnson might have done where she would be on IMDb for? I ask this as if I'm actually expecting either of you to know.
Well, I know one, and it's because I'm currently super obsessed with it.
Okay.
And now I want to play the reverse IMDb game. Do you know which Ashley Johnson property Pete is obsessed with right now?
I bet I do.
So what are you gonna give it a shot?
I'm gonna say it's The Last of Us, the video game.
It's absolutely The Last of Us. I'm obsessed with everything about The Last of Us. I'm in the middle of watching the show for the second time, making my wife watch it with me, and I love the game. So yes, now that I am back into the fold of the PlayStation universe, I'm playing through all the games, and they're still so good. And Ashley Johnson was the voice of Ellie.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Lachlan would hate me. I just want to bring this up. You should have had Lachlan here because he's played The Last of Us, I think, 13 times.
Oh, wow.
He's
wow,
a huge fan. So he would have known it. And
fantastic.
Can we just agree that this part is not like Lachlan is just like locked from it? It's just like a gap for him. He cannot listen to this.
Member-only chapter, right? Yeah, he can't hear this.
Just for him. Just for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Ashley Johnson, yes. The Last of Us as Ellie is one of her 4 IMDb known fors. Good job there, Pete.
It's all I've got. And this.
Also, this film where she's the waitress. She was also in 100 episodes, which is where probably more people know her from the TV show Blind Spot. That is the one with Jamie Alexander, who was also in in Thor. And has popped up a number of times.
I'm so embarrassed. I just looked her up, Andy. I'm totally cheating. And this is as embarrassed as, frankly, Ewan should be for not catching The Last of Us. I am so embarrassed by one of these entries. I can't believe it.
Is it this one? Is it Blind Spot?
No.
Is it Fast Food Nation? Because that's the 4th
No.
one. Okay.
It's Critical Role.
Okay. Yeah. That's another TV show that she's 323 episodes of that show.
323 episodes of the game. It's a YouTube property, and the folks over there are amazing. And Ashley Johnson is
yes. Is that the D&D?
Yeah,
live stream YouTube channel.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Amazing. 323 episodes. And I even like she is one of the early people. Like even Matthew Mercer only has 347 episodes and he's the DM. So she's been doing that for a long time. And that show is very funny. If you're into very long form D&D, this is great. I can't believe that.
I feel like this comes down to just voice actors just being a bit underrepresented and underappreciated a lot of time. That they don't really get to be the forefront of a lot. of stuff. Although she has a ton of credits in. And now I'm cheating as well in TV series and games and in so many things. But yeah, I'm still embarrassed. We need to move on.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
But that's Ashley Johnson. Certainly a face that a lot of people probably recognize. Unfortunately for her, as we have talked about, her part is largely excised from this film, which is sad because it's an interesting story. It would have made for some more powerful moments between her and Steve later in the film. But that's what we get. So she is here. She's running from the Chitauri, and she and a bunch of other people run into the Pershing Square Cafe where they hide and watch as everything gets destroyed. And that's, largely this minute is about the destruction. We do get a moment, and this is where we have part of a deleted scene here. Loki walks up to the landing pad at the penthouse, magics himself back into his full outfit. So now he's in his horny outfit, we'll just call it. But we get this weird deleted scene here of a very brief conversation that he has with the other, where, it's, I don't know, he kind of pops up and the other is, he lets him know that my time has come. There have been some, or he asks, the other says, have resistance? And he says, yes, but we'll pick them apart. And then the other asks about the rest, the quote, common throng. And Loki just says, we'll mow them down. And that's pretty much, it's a weird scene. I'm guessing that it would have been interrupted by Thor's arrival, which we also get in this minute. I mean, in the scope of deleted scenes, is there any realm where it would have been good to keep this in?
No.
I was actually wondering if there's any realm where, is there another category of deleted scene where it's just not even that they shouldn't have cut it, it's that they probably shouldn't have even shot it. Like, it's kind of a lot of work for a little bit, and it's totally useless.
Yeah, so much makeup work that you have to do.
So much makeup work.
The only thing I can think of that they're trying to do here is trying to remind us that the other is a part of this story, because we're not really going to get the other again. And so I'm just wondering if there was some reason to kind of keep the other in, but I don't know.
You know, what's interesting, and I think one of the reasons that I think the sequence doesn't work is that the way Loki has to manifest that he's now in a conversation with the other happens as his body just kind of, and it almost looks like he's channeling the other, which is a different kind of mechanic than we're used to from the rest of the movie. And because we don't have the opportunity in such a short scene to actually go into conversation mode, that I just don't think it plays, and it seems like others recognize that. Yeah, it feels weird to have it in here, like this and weird. It would be very weird to take Loki out of it and put him into that weird shadow zone, right? That would be a very strange thing to do in the middle of a battle. Well, I think it would have been akin to Loki's conversation with the other when he was sitting in the dirt in the underground bunker, where it was kind yoga pose. Yeah, where like that sort of conversation, where it was just kind of that mental connection between the two. But still, it just doesn't make any sense. I do, however, like the fact that Loki uses Tony's landing platform as this like dais to kind of view the war. Like, it feels very like that to me, I think, is a fantastic little moment that we have here. Yeah, it's a very kind of General Patton sort of looking over all that we hath wrought kind of a scene. Yeah. That does bring us to Thor's arrival. My first question to you two, how does Thor know where to go? Remember, last time we saw him was in the field, and he retrieved Mjolnir, doubted his powers, and then grabbed the hammer and took off. But again, like, no one has communicated with him. He was left in a field, and is it the blue beam? Is that blue his beam signal? Like, yes. Yeah, blue beam.
Obviously. Yes. Of course.
Okay. Go to the beam. He's a moth to the beam.
So he's been flying around the East Coast looking for any sign of Loki, and finally sees the beam and goes, aha!
Yes. We're going full beam.
All roads lead to Rome, and all blue beams lead to the Stark Tower in New York City. Mm-hmm.
And also, even if there wasn't a blue beam, like, this is the Thor who was able to ride lightning and land on a flying airplane. Like, he can navigate. Okay. That's all.
It's also funny how he just drops in from, as if he wouldn't be flying in like horizontally. He just comes down like, whoop.
He just falls.
Yeah.
Right. Like, he was up by the blue beam, like up by the hole. Yeah. And he's just like, oh, I'm just going to drop down there. It's all funny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to get this brief conversation with Thor and Loki, and we'll talk more about it in tomorrow's minute. The only other note I had here, we can certainly leave the rest for tomorrow, but it's the moment where Thor tells Loki, turn off the Tesseract. And I kind of chuckle at that because I'm like, it's not like a light switch. It's a weird, does it seem like the kind of idiot Thor, like saying something like that?
100%. Wait, you can't just turn this off? Like, that just feels like, what a silly question. You see what's going on right now? Do you think we wouldn't have tried to turn it off?
Yeah, it's so funny. I don't know, makes me chuckle when we hear him say that. But all right, well, again, Ewan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Remind everybody again about your podcast.
Yeah, we do a weekly podcast about new movies and TV, releasing every Tuesday. You can find it on YouTube, on Spotify, and all of the popular podcatcher apps. So go check that out if you're interested at all in film. We cover it all.
Fantastic. We'll have the links in the show notes, everybody. You can look there and find everything that you're looking for. We'll be back tomorrow for Minute 105. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Maybe tomorrow Andy will wear the horny suit.
I'm wearing it right now, Pete. I don't know if you can tell. But until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.